let's learn about the headless processing method. While one bot PC carries out one task in the regular processing method, the headless processing method runs automated processes in the background without showing them on the screen. After these processes have been developed, they can be run in parallel on bot PCs as background processes. Therefore, while a regular process occupies the GUI input devices, such as the mouse and keyboard, and does not allow for simultaneous processing of multiple projects, projects developed in headless method may be very effective when performing mass data processing involving repetitive calculations that do not require user inputs via the GUI. Also, while the regular processes are prone to errors due to incorrect inputs via the mouse or keyboard, the headless processes can be stably operated without worrying about the possibility of such errors because they can be executed without user inputs via the GUI. In short, compared to regular processes, headless processes can provide enhanced automation speed and increased utilization of bot resources. A headless project consists of a separate mode and libraries. In the Designer menu, select New Headless Project to create a new headless project. Then, in the Library area, only headless libraries will be displayed. Image libraries and object recognition-based app libraries will not be available for headless projects. Bots need to be configured in headless mode to execute a headless project. You can turn the headless mode option on or off in the Bot tab under the Settings menu. Let's compare a headless mode operation with a regular operation. A regular UI process assigns one process to one UI bot to perform sequential processing of jobs according to the order of the commands. On the other hand, a headless process assigns multiple processes to one headless bot to simultaneously perform a maximum of 10 jobs in the background. By performing parallel operations of multiple jobs, headless operations can shorten the operation time. A headless process can be verified on the process management screen of the user portal. Projects may be classified into regular projects and headless projects. After selecting a process, you can check the headless icon in front of the process name to figure out the process type. Also, the headless indication within a headless project means that the project has been created in headless mode. After executing a headless process on the user portal, you can monitor the process to view the status and history of jobs that are simultaneously being processed or on standby. Headless processes can be easily identified by the H icons in the top right corner. For headless projects, there are 6 dedicated libraries available. Of the 6 libraries, the Flow Control, System, and Outlook libraries are common libraries and will not be covered in this course. Refer to the Essential course for detailed information about these common libraries. So, let's learn about the libraries dedicated to headless projects, which are the Web Library, Excel Library, and Orchestrator Library. The Web Library is a WebDriver type library, which controls the termination of headless browser operation and reception and transmission of emails in the background. The Excel library takes care of headless Excel document control, such as creation and replication of worksheets and data replication. The Orchestrator library controls workflow design and project performance, just like a process flow. Then, let's find out the activities included in these libraries. First, let's take a look at the activities included in the Web Library. When developing a process in headless mode, web driver type operations may be used to control a web operation without launching a web browser. Web driver type operations become available by utilizing the web libraries that support headless mode operations. In the Properties window of each activity, you can set the automatic configuration of Xpath or CSS selector to allow the activities to recognize web objects and perform relevant activities, such as clicks in the background. The main activities in the Headless Web Library include the Web Open and the Web Close activities, which are used to launch and close a web browser. Also, there are the Web Find, Web Wait Appear, Web Set Text, and Web Click activities that are used to search for the specified objects and perform specific activities. Also, there is the Web Get Data activity to fetch data from the target object, and the Web Run Action activity to perform the action for the target object. As you can see, there is a naming rule for all headless web activities. Their names always begin with web. Now, let's find out how to utilize the activities included in the Headless Web Library. The Web Open activity is used to launch a browser and access a specific URL. For example, let's launch the Chrome web browser and access Google. In the Properties area of the Web Open activity, specify the browser ID as the variable you have previously defined in the Output field. In the Browser Type field, select Chrome. Then, in the URL field, you can enter the web address to access Google. In this example, we assigned the address to a variable and specified the name of the variable in the URL field. You can also set the Maximize option to True to launch the web browser in full screen mode. The Web Click activity is used to click a target object on the web. Let's configure the activity to access Naver and click the Calendar tab. First, in the Web Click activity properties, specify the browser field of the input item as the variable storing the browser ID for the Web Open activity. Then, set the query type of the activity item as Xpath and enter the automatic Xpath in the query field of the target item to click the target object. The Web Find activity is used to find target objects on the web. For example, the Web Find activity may be utilized to find the object for the News tab in Google. First, in the Web Find activity properties, specify the browser field of the input item to the variable storing the browser ID for the Web Open activity, and specify the element field of the output item as the variable to store the information of the target object. Then, in the query field of the target item, specify an object and configure the Xpath to find the target object and fetch the result value. The Web Wait Appear activity is used to wait until the target object is found. For example, let's suppose we need a process to access Google, search for news related to RPA, and wait until the results show up. In the Web Wait Appear activity properties, specify the browser field of the input item as the variable storing the browser ID for the Web Open activity. You can set the timeout until the relevant object shows up, and the default timeout will be set as 10 seconds. Then set the query type of the activity item as Xpath and specify the automatic Xpath in the query field of the target item as the target object that will appear on the browser. Now, to perform a specified action for the target object searched by the Web Find activity, let's utilize the Web Run Action activity. So, let's fetch the title of a news article related to RPA on Google. First, in the Web Run Action activity properties, specify the browser field of the input item as the variable storing the browser ID for the Web Open activity. Then, specify the variable for the target object searched by the Web Find activity, and, in the command field of the activity item, specify the activity that will be performed for the target object. Activities that are available for the target object include Click, Move to Element, Set Text, Get Data, and Get Bound. In this example, we have selected the Get Data activity to fetch data from the target object. The Web Get Data activity is used to fetch data from a target object on a web browser. In this example, we will fetch the stock price of Samsung SDS on Google. In the Web Get Data activity properties, specify the browser field of the input item as the variable storing the browser ID for the web open activity. And specify the data field of the output item as the variable to store the fetched data. Next, set the query type of the activity item as Xpath, and specify the object to fetch data from. The Xpath that enables recognition of the object via the WebDriver method will be automatically specified. The web close activity is used to close a browser. So, let's stop the operation of a launched browser and close it. In the web close activity properties, specify the browser field of the input item as the variable storing the browser ID for the web open activity to identify the browser to close. Next, let's find out the activities included in the Headless Excel libraries. The Excel library is a group of activities to control Excel documents that may be used to create, open, edit, and save Excel documents. In a process developed in headless mode utilizing the Excel library, the Excel file operations will be performed in the background without screen output. When you create a headless project, only the libraries available in the headless mode will be displayed on the screen. Therefore, all Excel activities other than the New Excel, Open Excel, Activate Excel, Get Active Excel, and Get Excel can be utilized in headless mode. Refer to the essential course about the detailed information about the Excel libraries that are not available in headless mode. Main activities in the Headless Excel library include the Headless New Excel activity that creates and executes new Excel documents, Headless Open Excel activity that opens existing Headless Excel files, and Set Headless Excel activity that activates deactivated Headless Excel files. So, let's find out how to utilize the Headless Excel library activities. The Headless New Excel activity is used to open a new Headless Excel file. Let's look at the example screen. In the Headless New Excel activity properties specify the Excel field of the output item as the variable to store handle value of the newly opened Excel file. Then, if you set the invisible field of the file item to true, a new Headless Excel document will be opened in the background when the designer is launched. If you want to manually verify if the new Headless Excel document is normally opened, you can set the invisible field of the file item to false. The Headless Open Excel activity is used to open a specific Headless Excel file. For example, in the Headless Open Excel activity properties, specify the Excel field of the output item as the variable to store handle value of the Headless Excel file to open. And in the path field of the file item, enter the path and file name for the Headless Excel file to open. Then, set the invisible field of the file item to true to open the existing Headless Excel document in the background. If you want to manually verify if the existing Headless Excel document is open normally, you can set the invisible field of the file item to false. If you select True for the Read-Only option of the file item, you can open the Excel file for read-only operation. Then, after selecting True for the Use Password option of the file item, you can require a password when opening or saving the Headless Excel document by selecting Secure for the password options. The Set Headless Excel activity activates a deactivated Excel file in headless mode. For example, when you open and edit two Headless Excel documents, you can activate the deactivated first Excel file while the second Excel file is being processed. In the Set Headless Excel activity properties, you can enter the name of the first Excel file inside single quotation marks in the file name filed of the file item to activate it. Finally, let's take a look at the activities included in the Orchestrator library. The Orchestrator library is a group of activities for executing and controlling processes. Main libraries in the Headless Orchestrator library include libraries for controlling process flows and libraries for creating and deleting channels to utilize the data queue. Also, there are libraries for sending or receiving data to or from another processes by utilizing the data queue and deleting the data, and libraries for uploading or downloading shared resource. Now, let's find out how to utilize the activities included in the Headless Orchestrator libraries. The call process activity is used to call a remote process registered on the server. So, let's design a workflow to call a process as a background task. In Headless mode, you can design a workflow by calling remote processes registered on the server, just like when you design a process flow. First, in the library area, select the Call Process activity. Then, in the project area, select Remote Process, right-click it, and click Add Remote Process in the context menu to display various processes registered on the server. From the list of processes, select a process to call and click Import to set the call process activity to call the process. The Wait for Multiple Events activity is used to set the orchestrator to wait until multiple specific events are completed. For example, to implement a flow to wait until all the 3 preceding events are completed and send a completion report email with the results. Add the Wait for Multiple Events activity in the flow and assign the Wait For fields of the conditions items with variables for the processing results of the events. Then, when the Wait for Multiple Events activity has been executed, a completion report email with the results will be sent by the Send Mail activity. Among the activities in the Orchestrator library, the Create Channel and Delete Channel activities are used to create and delete data queue management channels. The Create Channel activity is used to share data among multiple processes, and the required channel ID can be specified by defining a variable in the Properties window. In the Properties window, you can specify the channel ID field to utilize a data queue for exchanging data across different processes via the defined channel ID. To delete a channel that has been created, in the Delete Channel Activity Properties window, specify the channel ID field for the channel to delete. If you need to forcibly delete a channel with data, set the Force Deletion option to True. The Send Data activity is used to transfer data between processes. For example, let's organize the execution result of multiple headless processes in Excel. To transfer data via a previously created channel, in the Send Data Activity Properties window, select either File or Data for the Data Type option. In this example, we will select Data for this option. Then, enter the file name or data value to transfer in the data field, and specify the channel ID registered at the time of channel creation in the channel ID field. The result of the data transfer will be stored in the result variable for a return. The Receive Data activity is used to receive data from other processes. So, let's receive the execution result of a preceding process and organize it in an Excel file. For the Receive Data activity to receive data, the data must first be sent by the Send Data activity. Specify the variable to receive the data in the Output field, and specify the path of the stored file if it will be received as a file. Specify whether or not the received data will be a file for the IsFile option, and in the Channel ID field, specify the channel ID registered at the time of channel creation. The Clear Data activity is used to delete data from a channel. The used data must be deleted from the data queue by executing the Clear Data activity. In the Properties window, specify the channel ID registered at the time of channel creation. The Upload Resource and Download Resource activities are used to upload and download shared resources. After registering a text file in the Resource folder, you can utilize the Upload Resource activity to upload the file and create an uploaded file in the shared folder. Then, in the Download Resource Activity Properties window, you can specify the file path and file name in the Output and File Path fields to download the resource from the shared folder. When you do this, remember that the ID field of the resource item in the Download Resource Activity Properties window must be specified as the output variable specified in the Upload Resource Activity Properties. From now, let's take some time to further understand the headless libraries through exercises. The exercises will include a project for searching Google News and another for creating a new headless Excel file and copying and pasting the content of the new file into an existing Excel file after opening it. Let's begin the first exercise. Let's proceed with an example to create a task for searching Google News using your own account. First, define the work process as follows and design the basic process that will be implemented by utilizing RPA. Then, create and execute tasks and review the result. Now, let's find out how to actually create tasks. First, create a new headless project and a new task. In the top left menu of the RPA Designer screen, click New and click New Headless Project. Enter the project name. Then click the Create button. After that, in the project area in the top left section of the screen, select Task, right-click it, and select New Task. Enter Headless Google News as the name of the task. Then click the Create button. After creating a new headless project and a new task, configure the project to access Google. First, run Chrome browser and type RPA in the search window to display the search screen. Then, click the News tab to proceed to the News search screen. In the address window, copy the URL for the current search screen. Then, paste it in Notepad. Now, let's configure the URL for a Google News search screen. At the bottom of the Designer screen, click the Variables tab, and then click here to add new item. Define a variable called keyword. Then specify the initial value as RPA. Next, define a variable called URL to store the URL. Now, go back to Notepad and search for the keyword RPA in the copied URL. Replace the keyword with the variable for the keyword, this.keyword, and add plus before and after the variable. Then, enclose the URL addresses before and after the variable in single quotation marks. Next, select the entire text string and copy it. Then paste it in the initial value field of the previously defined URL variable. The initial value of the URL variable is used to open the search screen in the Chrome browser by utilizing the Web Open activity. Close the Chrome browser when the URL setting is complete. Now, let's begin to create the task. In the Library area, drag the Web Open activity and drop it between the Start and End nodes on the canvas. Then, at the bottom of the Designer screen, click the Variables tab and then click here to add new item. After that, create a normal type variable called driver to store the handle value of Chrome browser that will be opened. And in the Web Open activity properties, specify the browser field of the output item as this.driver. For the browser type option of the activity item, select Chrome. In the URL field, enter the variable name this.url, which we have defined earlier. Then, set the Maximize option to True. In the menu that is displayed after selecting the activity, click Run Step to execute the activity. And open the Google search screen. This time, let's learn how to configure the Xpath to search for the news list. First, in the Library area, drag the Web Find activity and drop it next to the Web Open activity on the canvas. In the Web Find Activity Properties window, specify the browser field of the input item as the this.driver variable, which stores the handle value of the Chrome browser opened with the Web Open activity. Then, define a normal type variable called elements to store the entire list of news. And in the properties, enter this.elements in the element field of the output item, and set the query type of the activity item as Xpath. Now, we need to specify the Xpath in the query field of the target item. Go to Google search screen that is currently open and press the F12 key to launch the developer tools. On the browser screen on the right, select the Elements tab and look for the HTML code corresponding to the part on the left-hand screen. The part we are looking for on the screen is the first news list of the entire news list. Continue searching for the part until the part we're looking for is indicated with a tooltip in the HTML code on the right screen. When the search is done, in the Elements tab, right-click the A tag in the HTML code. In the context menu, click Copy and copy Xpath in order to copy the Xpath into the clipboard. Then, paste the Xpath copied in the clipboard to Notepad. Here, the Xpath we found is for one news list, and we need to specify the Xpath for the entire news list again. In the first Xpath, div1 indicates that it is for the first news list, which is the first item of this array. Therefore, by replacing it with div, we can get the Xpath for the entire news list. Refer to the related website for detailed information about Xpath. Next, select the Web Find activity and in the Properties window, paste the Xpath we found earlier into the query field of the target item. And put single quotation marks before and after the code. Now, let's go back to Google search screen by pressing the F12 key. Then, on the designer, right-click the Web Find activity to display the context menu, and select Run Step to verify the news list search is performed correctly. Now, let's create a loop to fetch the titles of individual news articles and the URLs from Google search screen. In the library area, drag the For Each activity and drop it on the right side of the Web Find activity. Then, in the Activity Properties window, specify the variables that stands for the entire news list found via the Web Find activity in the ForList field of the conditions item. After that, create a variable to store the list of individual news articles and specify it in the Each item field. Next, let's fetch the news titles. In the library area, drag the Web Run Action activity and drop it inside the For Each activity. In the Activity Properties window, specify the browser field of the input item as the this.driver variable, which stores the handle value of the Chrome browser opened with the Web Open activity. And in the element field, specify the variable for the entire news list. Then, create a variable to store the individual news title. and specify the variable in the result field of the output item. Lastly, in the command option of the activity item, select Get Data to fetch the data. Now, let's create a news article by combining the fetched individual news title with the URL. In the library area, drag the Execute Script activity and drop under the Web Run Action activity. Then, in the Activity Properties window, we need to double-click the script field to display an input field and enter the script. Before entering the script, create variables that indicate the news URL and the news in the Variables tab at the bottom of the screen. Now, let's compose a script to combine the news title with the URL. After composing the script, click the Apply button to apply it. Lastly, let's implement a flowchart to display the URL on the screen. First, in the library area, drag the Web Close activity and drop it on the canvas. In the Activity Properties window, specify the browser field of the input item as the variable, which stores the handle value of the Chrome browser opened with the Web Open activity. Then, let's display the entire news titles and URLs on the screen. In the library area, drag the message box activity and drop it on the canvas, and then, in the Properties window on the right, enter the variables that store all the news titles and URLs in the Arguments field of the input item. Now, let's verify that the task we have created will be executed without errors. Before executing the process, close the Chrome browser. In the toolbar at the top of the designer screen, click the Run button to execute the task. You can see that all the news titles and URLs are displayed in the message box. After the verification, delete the message box activity and finish creating the task. Let's begin the second exercise. In this exercise, we will create a new Headless Excel document and enter a text string in the document. Then, we will open two existing Headless Excel documents and enter text strings in the documents. You can design the work process and basic process as follows. Create the task and execute it. Now, let's begin the implementation. First, let's open an existing project and create a new task. In the project area in the top left section of the screen, select Task, right-click it, and select New Task. Enter the task name. Then click the Create button. Now that a new task has been created, let's create a new Headless Excel document. In the library area, drag the Headless New Excel activity and drop it between the Start and End nodes on the canvas. Then, in the Variables tab, define a variable called Headless New Excel to store the handle value of the new Excel document. And in the Properties window, enter the variable in the Excel field of the output item. Now, let's verify that the new Headless Excel document has been successfully created. For this, in the Headless New Excel Activity Properties window, temporarily set the invisible option of the file item to false, because it is set to true by default. After making the setting change, run the Headless New Excel activity and ensure that the new Headless Excel document can be opened normally. Next, let's enter a text string in the Headless Excel document. In the library area, drag the right range activity and drop it to the right of the Headless New Excel activity on the canvas. In the Properties window, enter a text string, Headless Excel Test, in the Data Array field of the activity item. And specify the Start Cell field of the sheet item as A1. Now, let's verify if the text string will be correctly entered in the new Excel document. Select the activity, right-click it to display the context menu, and select Run to Here. Then, see if the text string has been correctly entered in the new Excel document. Next, let's save the new Excel document and close it. In the Library area, drag the Save Excel activity and drop it on the canvas. Then, in the Activity Properties window, enter the folder and file name for the saved file in the Save As field of the file item. After that, in the Library area, drag the Close Excel activity and drop it under the Save Excel activity. Then, in the Properties window, enter Active Excel in the Excel field of the input item. To close the currently activated Excel document, let's run the task we have created so far to make sure that the new Headless Excel document can be correctly saved and closed. Next, let's implement a flowchart to open existing Headless Excel documents. We will open two Excel files here, which are the new Excel document we have created earlier with the Headless New Excel activity and another existing Excel document. In the Library area, drag the Headless Open Excel activity and drop it on the canvas twice. First, select the first Headless Open Excel activity, and in the Properties window, enter the variable to store the handle value in the Excel field of the output item. And enter the path and file name for the Excel document to open in the path field of the file item. Before we open the second Excel document, in the Variables tab, define a variable called Headless Open Excel to store the handle value of the second Excel file. Now, select the second Headless Open Excel activity, and in the Properties window, enter the variable to store the handle value of the Send Excel document in the Excel field of the output item. And enter the path and file name for the second Excel document in the path field of the file item. This time, let's implement a flow to enter a text string in the second Excel document and close it. In the Library area, drag the Right Range activity and drop it on the canvas. In the Properties window, specify the Excel field of the input item as Active Excel. Enter a text string, Headless Excel Test, in the Data Array field of the activity item. And specify the Start Cell field of the sheet item as A1. Then, in the Library area, drag the Save Excel activity and drop it on the canvas. And, in the Properties window, specify the Excel field of the input item as Active Excel. After that, in the Library area, drag the Close Excel activity and drop it under the Save Excel activity. And then, in the Properties window, enter Active Excel in the Excel field of the input item to close the currently activated Excel document. Now, let's activate the Excel document that was opened first. In the Library area, drag the Set Headless Excel activity and drop it on the canvas. And then, in the Properties window, enter the file name for the Excel file that was opened first in the File Name field. to activate the Excel document. Finally, let's implement the flowchart to enter a text string in the first Excel document and close it. In the Library area, drag the Right Range activity and drop it on the canvas. And then, in the Properties window, specify the Excel field of the input item as Active Excel. After that, enter a text string, Headless Excel Test 2, in the Data Array field of the activity item. And specify the Start Cell field of the sheet item as A1. Then, in the Library area, drag the Save Excel activity and drop it on the canvas. And, in the Properties window, specify the Excel field of the input item as Active Excel. After that, in the Library area, drag the Close Excel activity and drop it under the Save Excel activity. And then, in the Properties window, enter Active Excel in the Excel field of the input item to close the currently activated Excel document. Lastly, to ensure that the script we have created can be executed without error, click the Run button in the toolbar at the top of the Designer screen. After executing the script, open the Excel files and make sure that they were correctly created as intended.